The great hall of the Zillyrian palace was filled with light that seemed to come from nowhere. Walls of crystal reflected soft colors, and tall columns rose into the high ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Every sound echoed gently as if the room itself wanted to listen. Into this place walked Dr. Elias Marin, a human ambassador carrying not only Earth's greetings but also the heavy weight of expectation. He paused at the threshold for a moment, his eyes adjusting to the brilliance of the chamber. The Zillyrians were already waiting. Tall, elegant, with skin that shimmered faintly like polished stone, they stood in silence. Their eyes were large and deep, as if each one held the reflection of stars. They were known across the galaxy for their intelligence, their discipline, and their long lifespans. But above all, they were known for their ruler, the Zillyrian queen, who had ruled longer than any human civilization had existed. Elias had read about her in every record he could find. She was described as eternal, calm, and utterly without emotion. Her decisions were always logical, her words precise, her presence unshakable. To stand before her was to stand before the embodiment of order itself. And yet, as he took his first steps forward, Elias wondered if the descriptions could ever match the reality. At the far end of the hall, on a throne carved from a single massive crystal, the queen sat waiting. She was taller than the others, her crown seemingly a part of her head grown like natural crystal. Her gaze met Elias's, and for a moment he felt as if the air had thickened around him. Those eyes studied him not with curiosity, but with the sharpness of a mind that missed nothing. "You are the human," she said, her voice soft but resonant, carrying through the chamber without effort. Elias bowed respectfully. "Yes, Your Majesty. I am Elias Marin, representative of Earth. I bring greetings and peace from my people." The queen tilted her head slightly. It was not a gesture of welcome, nor was it dismissal. It was something in between, as though she were measuring the weight of his words. "Peace," she repeated. "Your kind speaks of peace, but also of change. We Zillyrians have endured for thousands of years without change. Why do you bring it to us?" Elias took a breath. He had practiced answers for questions like this, but facing her directly made his words feel small. Still, he spoke with honesty, as he had promised himself he would. "Because peace is more than silence, Your Majesty. It is more than the absence of conflict. It is the chance to share, to grow together, and to learn things we could not discover alone." The queen's expression did not change, but Elias thought he saw a faint flicker in her gaze, like a light passing over still water. She raised one hand, and instantly the courtiers stepped back, leaving Elias alone at the center of the hall. "You speak of sharing," she said. "Tell me then, human, what do you share that we do not already know? Our science spans the galaxy. Our knowledge is deep. What could your small world offer us?" It was a challenge, but Elias did not let himself falter. "Perhaps nothing you can measure with numbers or charts," he said slowly. "But humanity shares stories. We share laughter. We share family. These are not things of science, but they give meaning to life." For the first time, the queen leaned forward slightly. The motion was almost imperceptible, but to the Zillyrians around her it was shocking. Whispers moved among them like a breeze. Their queen never leaned forward. She was always still, like a statue. "Family," she repeated. The word rolled strangely in her mouth, as if it was both familiar and unfamiliar at once. "We know of the concept, parents and offspring, but it is only biology, nothing more." "Not for us," Elias said gently. "Family is more than biology. It is love, care, and responsibility. A parent does not only create life, they nurture it, protect it, and guide it. A child is not only survival of the species, it is joy, surprise, and hope for tomorrow." The hall fell silent. The courtiers stared at Elias as though he had spoken something unheard of, something that crossed boundaries they never thought to question. The queen's gaze, however, did not leave his face. "Joy," she said, as though tasting the word. "Hope. These are human ideas." "They are universal ideas," Elias replied softly. "Perhaps buried, perhaps forgotten, but not only human." The queen did not answer immediately. Instead, she sat back again, her eyes narrowing slightly. For a long moment, Elias wondered if he had spoken too boldly, if he had crossed some invisible line. But then, to his surprise, she asked a question. "Do you have children, Elias Marin?" The sudden personal nature of the question startled him. He nodded. "Yes, a daughter. Her name is Leora. She is 12 years old." "Tell me of her," the queen commanded. Elias felt a warmth spread through his chest at the thought of his daughter. His voice softened as he spoke. She is curious about everything. She asks questions I cannot always answer. She loves drawing the stars, though she has never seen them without a city sky. She laughs often, even when life is difficult. She teaches me as much as I teach her. The queen was utterly still, but her eyes seemed to shine faintly. You speak with warmth, she said at last. This is not logic. This is not calculation. It is something else. It is love, Elias said simply. The word lingered in the hall, strange and powerful. The Zillyrians looked at one another, their expressions uncertain. Love was not a word often used in their language. It had no place in their science, no role in their politics, and yet here was a human, offering it as though it was the most natural truth in the universe. The queen did not dismiss him. She did not declare his words foolish. Instead, she was silent, as though listening to an echo only she could hear. Finally, she rose from her throne. The motion caused a ripple of shock among the courtiers, who bowed instantly. The queen never stood during an audience. She always remained seated, untouchable, removed. But now she descended the steps, her long crystal robe whispering against the floor, until she stood only a few steps away from Elias. She studied him closely, her gaze piercing but no longer cold. For a moment, Elias thought he saw something new, a spark, faint but undeniable in her expression. You are unlike others I have met, she said quietly. Perhaps humans carry something we do not. We shall see. And then, without warning, the queen turned and walked back toward her throne. But as she moved, the faintest curve touched her lips. It was not a full smile, not yet, but it was more than the Zillyrians had ever seen from her before. The courtiers whispered in awe, their eyes wide. Elias did not fully understand what had just happened. But he knew one thing. The queen had begun to listen not just with her mind, but with something deeper, and that, he realized, was the beginning of everything. The next meeting between Dr. Elias Marin and the Zillyrian queen was set only 3 days after the first. For Elias, that was a surprise. He had been told that audiences with her could take months or even years to arrange. The queen did not meet outsiders without long preparation. Yet now, after only a short pause, she wished to see him again. When Elias entered the great crystal hall for the second time, the air felt different. The courtiers still stood in their ordered rows, silent as always, but there was something new in their posture. They were curious. Their queen's interest in this human had unsettled them, and none dared to predict what might come of it. The queen herself sat upon her throne, as still and majestic as before. But when her eyes found Elias, there was a trace, so faint it might have been imagined, of recognition. Welcome again, Elias Marin, she said, her voice calm and smooth. I have considered your words, Elias bowed. I am honored, Your Majesty. You spoke of family, she continued, each syllable measured. Of bonds not made of science but of care. I wish to know more. You will explain. Elias nodded slowly. He had expected political questions, treaties, resources, trade. Instead, she asked about something deeply personal, something most leaders of other worlds would dismiss as unimportant. Yet she seemed intent. He chose his words carefully. Family is the root of who we are. It is where we learn first lessons, how to speak, how to share, how to comfort. A child looks at a parent not only for food or shelter, but for guidance, for kindness, for love. The queen leaned slightly forward again, just as she had before. Whispers passed through the courtiers. Love, she repeated. This word again. What does it mean in action? Elias smiled gently. Love is seen in small things. A parent stays awake through the night when their child is sick. A mother tells stories before sleep to bring comfort. A father cheers when his child succeeds and comforts when they fail. Love is choosing to give without demand. It is joy in another's happiness. The queen's gaze did not waver. Her face remained calm, yet Elias felt she was studying him with great intensity. We Zillyrians have not lived this way for many ages, she said. Our children are created through science, raised by collective guidance. No one is parent, no one is child. All serve the whole. Then perhaps that is why it feels missing, Elias replied softly. A child who belongs to everyone may also belong to no one. But when a child knows someone calls them son or daughter, they feel special. They feel chosen. That gives strength. The courtiers stirred uneasily. To them, Elias's words were strange, even dangerous. Their system had worked for centuries. Why question it now? But the queen silenced them with a small motion of her hand. "Tell me more," she ordered. And so Elias told stories. He spoke of his daughter Leora again, how she painted bright colors on walls when she was younger, leaving stains he could not wash away, and how instead of anger, he laughed and kept the marks as memories. He told how she once climbed too high in a tree and became afraid to come down, and how he encouraged her gently until she found courage. He even shared how she argued with him sometimes, stubborn and strong, yet always returned with a hug. The queen listened without interruption. To the courtiers, this was astonishing. They had never seen her give such attention to anyone's words, not even her own high advisors. Finally, she spoke. "You speak of imperfection without shame, of mistakes that become memories, of disobedience that becomes strength. In our way, such things are corrected, prevented. We remove the flaw." Elias nodded. "But sometimes what you call a flaw is what makes a person unique. Humanity does not fear mistakes. We see them as steps to learning, and sometimes the greatest beauty is in imperfection." The queen's eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger. Rather, she seemed to be thinking deeply, as though encountering a riddle she wished to solve. For a long silence, the hall was still. Then she asked a question that took everyone by surprise. "Tell me, Elias Marin, when you look at your daughter, what do you feel?" Elias's voice softened. "I feel wonder. She is both part of me and not me. She surprises me every day. She gives me reason to be better than I was before. She reminds me that the future is not mine alone. It belongs to her and to those who come after. That is love, Your Majesty. It is knowing my life is not only for myself." The queen sat back slowly, as though absorbing his words. The courtiers shifted in unease, for they sensed something shifting within her. "You give much of yourself to another," she said finally. "And in return, what do you receive?" Elias smiled softly. "More than I ever give." Her smile, her laughter, her dreams. "When she says she loves me, I know my life has meaning." The queen's eyes shone faintly in the crystal light. "Meaning," she echoed. "A word our people seldom use." She stood, her robe flowing like liquid glass. The entire hall bowed, though Elias remained standing as protocol allowed. She stepped closer than before, stopping only a short distance away. "Human," she said, her voice quieter now, almost thoughtful. "You have brought words to me that no one has dared to speak. You have shown me a picture of life different from our own. I do not yet know what to think of it, but I find I wish to know more." Her statement was not only unusual, it was unprecedented. The Queen of the Zillyrians did not confess ignorance. She did not express desire for knowledge from outsiders. Yet here she was, admitting openly that this human had given her something new. The courtiers looked stunned. Some exchanged uncertain glances. Change was in the air, and they did not know whether to fear it or welcome it. Elias bowed again, his heart steady though his mind raced. "I am honored, Your Majesty. I will share whatever you wish." The queen regarded him for another moment, then turned back toward her throne. But before she sat, she spoke words that would echo far beyond the crystal hall. "Tomorrow," she said, "you will tell me of your people's way of raising life. You will show me more of this love you speak of. I command it." "Yes, Your Majesty," Elias replied. When he left the hall that day, the courtiers' whispers followed him. Some sounded doubtful, others curious, a few even fearful. Yet Elias knew one truth: the queen was listening. Something had been planted in her heart, something small, fragile, but alive. And he wondered as he walked through the glowing corridors of the palace what it might one day grow to become. Weeks turned into months, and Dr. Elias Marin found himself returning again and again to the Zillyrian palace. Each visit felt less like a formal duty and more like stepping into a strange kind of friendship. The queen always sat upon her crystal throne, yet now there was something different in her presence. She did not only ask about treaties or knowledge, she asked about life. She asked about childhood, about laughter, about what it meant to grow in a family. Elias told her stories. Sometimes he spoke of his daughter Leora, and sometimes of his own youth, memories of climbing trees, of hearing his mother's songs, of being guided by a father's quiet strength. These were not tales of power or glory. They were simple human moments. And yet the queen listened to them with deep attention, as if each word revealed something she had always missed. The courtiers watched with unease. Their queen was changing. She who had always been calm and unshakable, now lingered on words like hope, joy, and love. They could not understand why such small human ideas held her interest. But they could not stop it. One day, after many visits, the queen summoned Elias not to the grand hall but to a smaller chamber. It was quiet there, with walls of pale crystal and light that seemed softer, almost gentle. When Elias entered, he was surprised to see no courtiers, no advisors. Only the queen awaited him. "You may sit," she said, her voice steady. It was the first time she had ever invited him to sit. Elias felt a strange warmth in the gesture. He lowered himself onto a crystal seat across from her, meeting her gaze with calm respect. "I have considered much," the queen began. "For centuries our people have lived without change. We created life only by science, repeating patterns without end. We believed it was perfection, but your words have unsettled that belief." Elias did not answer at once. He could see that she was not merely speaking as a ruler, but as someone searching within herself. "You told me," she continued, "that love gives meaning, that imperfection brings uniqueness, that a parent shapes the future through care. These ideas have grown within me like seeds, and now they have led me to something unexpected." Her eyes held his steadily. "Come with me. You must see." She rose, and Elias followed. The queen led him through corridors he had never seen before, deeper into the palace. The walls glowed with softer light, and the air was warm, almost alive. At last they entered a chamber unlike any other. It was quiet, filled with a gentle humming sound. In the center stood a cradle of crystal, glowing faintly from within. Elias stepped closer, and his breath caught. Inside the cradle lay a child. Small, delicate, and unlike anything he had ever seen. The skin was pale with a faint shimmer like the Xilirian's, but the eyes, though closed in sleep, held a shape more human. Tiny fingers curled gently, rising and falling with each soft breath. Elias turned to the queen, astonished. "What is this?" The queen's voice softened in a way he had never heard before. "This is life, a child, created not as we have always done, by cloning and replication, but by union, by blending what you gave with what I am." Elias stared at her, struggling to understand. "What I gave? When you first arrived," she explained, "your biology was studied, as is the custom for all who enter our world. Samples were taken for analysis to ensure compatibility with our environment. I kept them, and with them I dared something my people had long forgotten. I combined your essence with mine. The result is this." Elias's heart pounded, not with fear but with wonder. "You mean, this child is both human and Xilirian?" "Yes," the queen said. "The first of its kind. The first true child born to our people in countless ages. Not copied, not manufactured, but created through choice and courage." For a long moment Elias could not speak. He looked again at the sleeping child, at the tiny chest rising and falling. It was alive, truly alive, in a way that carried warmth beyond science. The queen stepped closer to the cradle. Her gaze, usually cold and perfect, now softened. She reached out, and with surprising tenderness she touched the child's hand. At once the small fingers closed around her finger. And for the first time in living memory, the queen smiled. It was not faint, not hidden. It was a clear, bright smile filled with awe and something greater, something like love. Elias felt his throat tighten. "This is a miracle." The queen turned to him, her eyes shining. "You gave me this. Without your words, without your stories, I would never have dared. You showed me that life is not only about survival, not only about order, it is about wonder, about love. You made me a mother, human." The words hung in the air, carrying weight beyond measure. For centuries the queen had been only a ruler, untouchable and eternal. Now she stood as something new, not just sovereign, but parent. Elias stepped closer to the cradle, gazing at the child. "What will you call them?" The queen hesitated, as though the idea of naming was unfamiliar. "Among my people, names are given to functions, not to lives. But this child is different. It deserves more." She looked at Elias. "What do humans do?" "We give names that carry hope," Elias said softly. "We choose words that speak of who we dream they may become." The queen considered this. "Then I will name the child Elira. In our tongue it means light of dawn." Elias smiled. "A beautiful name." Together they watched the child for a long time. The soft hum of the chamber seemed like a lullaby, wrapping the moment in peace. For the first time since his arrival, Elias felt he was not only an ambassador between worlds but a witness to history. At last, the queen spoke again. This child will be a symbol. My people will resist. They will question. But they will see. They will learn that life can be more than endless repetition. They will know that the future can hold surprise. Elias nodded. And they will see your smile, Your Majesty. That will change more than any command. The queen turned to him, and for a brief moment her smile widened. It was a rare, radiant thing, like sunlight breaking through a storm. You are right, she said, but I will need you still. This child will need more than a mother. It will need guidance from both our kinds. You must stay, Elias Marin. You must help teach Elira what it means to be human as well as Zilirian. Elias felt the weight of her request. He thought of his daughter far away on Earth, of the promises he had made. Yet he also saw the sleeping child, innocent and new, carrying the bridge between two civilizations in its tiny hands. I will stay, he said quietly, for the child, for the future. The queen closed her eyes for a moment as though giving silent thanks. When she opened them again, they glowed with quiet determination. Then it begins, she said. And in that hidden chamber, under the soft light of crystal walls, a new future was born. Not only for the queen, not only for Elias, but for two entire worlds. The months following Elira's birth were unlike any time in the Zilirian Empire's long history. The halls of the palace, once filled only with precise order and quiet discipline, now echoed with laughter and gentle sounds of life. The courtiers moved carefully, uncertain at first, yet gradually learning to embrace the change. Elias Marin remained at the palace, not merely as an ambassador, but as a teacher and guardian. He spent long hours with Elira, showing the child how to explore curiosity, how to ask questions, and how to take joy in small discoveries. The queen observed quietly at first, absorbing Elias's ways. She watched Elira's tiny hands trace the patterns of the crystal walls, and she marveled as the child's laughter, clear and bright, bounced off the walls, something so unfamiliar to her that it felt like magic. The Zilirians themselves were cautious. They had long believed that emotions like joy or curiosity were distractions from the perfection of logic. Yet even they could not deny the change in the queen. The ruler who had once been untouchable now smiled frequently, sometimes softly, sometimes with delight, often over the child's small achievements. One morning, as Elias played a simple game with Elira, teaching the child to trace shapes in the soft crystal dust on the floor, the queen approached. She knelt down beside the child for the first time, letting her long, flowing robe pull gently around her feet. Elira looked up and reached for her hand, and the queen's eyes softened in a way that surprised even herself. You are lively, she said gently, her voice carrying warmth. Your laughter fills more than this room. It fills me. Elira giggled and clapped, leaning toward the queen. Elias smiled, watching the exchange. She is learning quickly, he said. And she teaches us too. The queen looked thoughtful. I see that now. Our people focus on knowledge and precision, but we forget the heart. We forget what it is to live fully, to feel connection. Elias nodded. That is the human gift. Not just science or skill, but the ability to care, to create bonds. You are discovering it yourself, indeed she was. Each day the queen found herself participating in moments she had never imagined she would care about. She read stories to Elira, speaking softly so the child would understand. She marveled at the child's imagination, at the unexpected solutions Elira created when playing simple games. And she realized that she too was learning how to delight in imperfection. Word of the child spread quietly through the Zilirian society. The elders and scientists, initially wary, came to observe. They were astonished to see a child so unlike any they had known. Elira's mind was sharp, yes, but it was also playful. The child asked questions that no protocol had prepared them to answer. The laughter, the curiosity, the joy, it was contagious. Even the most reserved Zilirians found themselves drawn into Elira's world, their minds opening to possibilities they had never considered. The queen's change was more than emotional. It was a shift for the entire empire. Policies that had been rigid for centuries began to bend. Education incorporated curiosity as well as logic. Art, previously considered secondary to science, began to flourish. The palace became a place not only of administration but of creation, of learning and of life. Elias watched all this quietly, often reflecting on how small moments could ripple outward. He remembered the first time he had told the Queen about human families, about love, about care. That conversation had planted a seed, and now, months later, that seed had grown into something larger than anyone could have imagined. One afternoon, as the soft light of the crystal halls bathed the room in gentle colors, the Queen called Elias aside. He found her standing near the balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The air was still, filled with the hum of life, the hum of growing plants, of laughter from distant chambers, and of quiet conversation among the courtiers who had learned to speak with warmth. "You see what has changed," she said softly, "not only in me but in them. The courtiers, the scholars, they are beginning to understand, to see that life is more than perfection, that joy and curiosity are strengths, not weaknesses." Elias nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty, and it is because of Aelira. The child is a bridge showing them the possibilities they never knew existed." The Queen smiled, the kind of full smile she had once thought impossible for herself. "Aelira is indeed a bridge, and I am learning too. I did not know I could feel so alive." Elias looked at her, noticing the subtle shift in her posture, the way she carried herself with warmth instead of only authority. "You are discovering the human way of life, Your Majesty. Not as a mimic, but as someone who chooses to care. That is the power of love and guidance." She considered this, watching the sun glint off the crystals. "I once believed that perfection meant removing all flaws, all unpredictability. Now I see, life's value is in its unpredictability, in the moments that surprise us, in the bonds that grow stronger because they are chosen, not mandated." Elias smiled. "And you have chosen well. You have chosen life, and it has chosen you back." The Queen's eyes softened, and she looked down at the balcony, imagining the child growing taller, learning more each day. "Yes, I see now that life is not only the function of survival but the experience of living fully, and I want to give this gift to my people, so they may grow too." Over the following weeks, the palace transformed further. Spaces once empty became classrooms for learning, areas for games, and quiet corners for reflection. Aelira's laughter became the heartbeat of the place, guiding the rhythm of life. The Queen frequently spent hours simply observing, letting herself enjoy moments of quiet wonder. She learned to take walks with the child, teaching them words and ideas and learning from the child's imagination in return. Elias watched these moments with quiet satisfaction. Humanity's greatest gift, he realized, was not power or technology, but the ability to inspire life and joy, to show that love and guidance could create futures brighter than any plan or formula. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace, Elias found himself sitting beside the Queen in the garden. Aelira had gone to rest, exhausted from a day of play and learning. The Queen leaned back against a smooth crystal wall, her eyes reflecting the moon's gentle glow. "You have changed me," she said softly. "Not only my perspective, but my very being. I understand now that life's purpose is not only to endure, but to connect, to care, to nurture." Elias smiled. "That is what humans do. That is what your child is learning. That is what your people will learn in time, and all of it begins with small moments, small choices, and the courage to care." The Queen looked at him, her gaze steady, yet filled with warmth. "I see it, and I am grateful. You have shown me a future I never thought possible." Elias nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "The future is never certain, Your Majesty, but it is beautiful when we build it together." The Queen's smile grew brighter. "Yes, together. Perhaps this is the most important lesson of all." And as they sat together, watching the moons rise and the gardens glow softly in the night, a sense of hope filled the palace. Aelira's life had created more than a new beginning for a child. It had created a new beginning for a civilization. The Queen, once distant and untouchable, had discovered the joy of connection, the power of care, and the wonder of life itself. In that quiet moment, Elias understood that humanity's true strength was not in conquest or knowledge, but in the ability to inspire, to nurture, and to create bonds that could change hearts and worlds. And so, the Xelirian Empire stepped into a new kind of future, one where logic and love, science and joy, authority and care could coexist. The child's laughter, bright and pure, became the symbol of that future, guiding the hearts of all who would follow. For the first time in countless generations, the palace was not only a seat of power, but a home filled with life, hope, and limitless possibility. Years passed and Elira grew quickly. Though a child, she carried the spark of both her human and Xelerian heritage. Her mind was curious, her heart open, and her laughter filled the halls of the palace like music. The courtiers, scientists, and scholars who had once been cautious now marveled at her brilliance. She questioned everything, explored everything, and brought joy to all who watched her. The queen, who had once been untouchable and serene, had transformed. Her smiles were now frequent and genuine, no longer rare glimpses but open expressions of warmth. She walked the palace not only as a ruler but as a mother, guiding Elira, observing her, and learning alongside her. Elias Marin continued to serve not as a diplomat, but as a mentor, helping the child discover both human creativity and Xelerian logic. On a bright morning, the queen called Elias to her private chamber. The child was nearby, busy exploring patterns in the crystal floor, humming softly in concentration. The queen's gaze was steady, calm yet sparkling with emotion. "Elias," she said, "I wish to speak openly. You have been with us for many years now. You have guided Elira, shown me what life can be beyond duty and perfection. And I feel I must tell you what this has meant." Elias bowed respectfully, smiling softly. "I am honored, Your Majesty, but I believe the story belongs to the child as much as to us." The queen shook her head gently. "No. While Elira is the bridge, you are the reason the bridge exists. You taught me to imagine, to nurture, to care. I want you to understand the gift you have given, not only to me but to all of my people." She led Elias to the balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The morning sun glinted off the crystal towers, casting light that danced across the floor. Birds, native to this world, flitted among the trees, and the soft laughter of Elira echoed through the gardens. "I have lived many centuries," the queen said, her voice softer than usual. "In all that time, I believed knowledge and precision were the highest achievements. I believed perfection lay in control, in removing all unpredictability. Yet I was wrong. The greatest gift is not knowledge, not control, not immortality. It is connection. It is the courage to care, and for that lesson I owe you more than words can hold." Elias felt a warmth in his chest. "I only showed what humans know. The gift was always yours to receive." She looked at him, eyes glimmering. "Perhaps. But without your guidance, without your stories, without your belief in the value of love and family, I would never have dared to create life in a way my people had forgotten. You made me a mother, human, and you have given my people a future they could not have imagined." Elias's gaze fell to the garden below. He could see Elira now, standing on a small bridge over a crystal stream, balancing carefully, her hands outstretched, then laughing as she stepped safely to the other side. She turned, spotting him and the queen, and waved excitedly. The queen waved back, smiling with pride and tenderness. "She is extraordinary," Elias said softly. "Yes," the queen agreed, "and she is more than a child. She is a teacher, a symbol, a promise. She reminds us that life is not only about survival but about joy, curiosity, and love. My people see it now, slowly, carefully, but they see it." In the palace, the Xelerians were changing. Scholars incorporated art alongside logic. Children's education included creativity and emotion, and the halls rang with laughter that had once been unheard. And yet the queen herself had changed the most. She no longer bore the cold perfection that had defined her for centuries. Her face, her posture, her every gesture carried warmth, love, and the wisdom that comes from embracing life fully. One evening, as twin moons rose over the palace, Elias and the queen sat together on the balcony. Elira slept peacefully in her chamber, her small breath steady and soft. The palace was quiet except for the gentle hum of life, the air full of flowering plants, the faint glow of crystal light, and the distant voices of Xelerians exploring new ways to think and feel. "You have given me more than I ever expected," the queen said quietly, gazing at the moons. "I do not know how to repay you, for the debt is not something that can be measured or returned." Elias smiled. "Your happiness, Your Majesty, the laughter, the wonder, the hope, that is enough. That is all I could wish for." The queen turned to him fully, her eyes bright. "I want you to understand something, Elias. Before you came, I did not know I could feel this way. I did not know I could smile, laugh, or imagine life beyond my duties. I did not know I could care so deeply. You taught me that these things are not weaknesses, they are the source of strength. And for that I will be forever grateful. Elias's throat tightened with emotion. You have taught me too. I came here to teach, but I have learned more than I could have imagined. From you, from Elira, from this world. The queen reached out and placed her hand gently on his. It was a gesture of trust, warmth, and appreciation, unlike anything Elias had seen from her before. Then we have shared a true bond, she said, not as ruler and ambassador, but as allies, as friends, as a family of choice. They sat in silence for a while, watching the moons cast their glow over the gardens. Then the queen spoke again, softly but clearly. I have ruled for centuries, Elias. I have thought I knew the world. But now with Elira, with you, with what I have learned, I understand that ruling is not only about power. It is about care. It is about love. It is about giving life meaning. Elias nodded, feeling the truth in her words. And that is the legacy that will endure long after us. The queen smiled then, fully and brightly, without hesitation. It was the kind of smile that could not be forgotten, the kind that warmed hearts and inspired hope. Yes, she said, it is a legacy born of life itself, and we shall honor it together. As the moons climbed higher, Elias knew that the Zilirian Empire had truly changed. Not through force or command, but through care, attention, and the courage to embrace the unknown. The queen, radiant and proud, looked upon her child and her people, knowing that the future was brighter than she had ever imagined. Elira's life had not only united two worlds, but it had reminded everyone that life's greatest gifts were not measured in wealth or control, but in connection, love, and wonder. The laughter of a child, the smile of a mother, the guidance of a teacher. They were all pieces of a universe richer than any could calculate. Elias gazed at the queen, then at the sleeping child. You have everything now, he said softly. A child who will guide your people, a future filled with hope and a life full of meaning. The queen's eyes glistened with emotion. Yes, and it is all because of humanity. Because of you. Because of the courage to care. I will never forget it. She looked out over the palace, over the gardens, over the bright horizon that promised endless possibilities. Then she turned back to Elias one last time, her smile shining brighter than any crystal or moonlight. You made me a mother, human, she said, her voice carrying the weight and wonder of centuries. And for that I will carry your gift forever. Elias bowed, humbled and honored. And I will carry the memory of this with me, Your Majesty, always. As they stood together, watching the dawn light scatter across the palace, Elias realized that humanity's greatest power was not in conquering worlds, but in inspiring them. Through compassion, through care, through the courage to love and teach, humans could change even the most timeless and unyielding civilizations. And in that moment, with the queen's bright smile reflecting both pride and joy, he knew that the future had truly begun, a future where life, hope, and connection would thrive, bridging two worlds in harmony, laughter, and love. The palace, once a place of quiet precision, had become a home. The Zilirian Empire, once rigid and untouchable, had learned to dream, and humanity, through one simple ambassador and one extraordinary child, had reminded the galaxy that the power to inspire and nurture was the greatest strength of all. And the queen smiled brightly, knowing that love, life, and hope had found a home in her heart, and in the hearts of all who would follow.